Hey guys, buckle up for the first episode of VisionCast, the one podcast that will bring you all the latest and greatest technology trends from top technology leaders, from supply chain to retail, whether it's cloud transformation, digital enablement, or latest trends on data and AI. I'm your host, Tauseef, and today we are touching the most burning topic in retail world with the changing buying behavior and the revolutionary transformation in the online channels. Is traditional retail dead, or is it just different? With Will Vinton, Senior Director of Visionet, we also have few dead jokes. So make sure you listen all the way through. On that note, let's just go to it. So Will, welcome to our first podcast. You have to set the bar super high, so no pressure here. So beside, how are you today?
I'm doing well, and I appreciate being here. I'm going to do my best to set the bar high for the first ever inaugural podcast, and I brought some dad jokes. I know you showed me up in the our little dry run we had last week, so I came prepared today. So at the end of the
Awesome.
show, we're going to have to ask whoever was kind enough to sit through this and watch us for 20, 30 minutes who won.
Let's do that. Okay,
We'll
so
have
well, why don't you just start with what is VisionNet? Can you just quickly give us elevator pitch of what VisionNet does?
Yeah, we do a lot of things, Tussie, but it's a great question. I mean, the boilerplate answer is that we are a global systems integrator. Um, we are a global company that has a reach within digital data and AI and cloud and DevOps. I sit in the digital side where we focus on commerce, retail, CPG, as well as really content management, customer data platforms, marketing automation, and much more. And then on the data and AI side, we have folks who are focused on obviously reporting, integration, AI and ML, which is becoming a very hot, exciting topic. And then on the cloud side, from your infrastructure, your security, compliance, and DevOps. So we do a lot here at Visionet, but we are even though we have a big team and we can do so many things, we are still kind of your neighborhood IT consulting partner. We love to interact and build those long-term partnerships and relationships with our clients. So that's who we are
Awesome.
at a quick little intro.
Awesome. Welcome, and let's just get to it. As you say, you're working on digital side. I'm sure you interact with a lot of retailers and doing a lot of different good work. But let me just start with one interesting question. That I was just keep reading about that the online channel are mushrooming. What that even means, and how we can explain it to the consumer or the companies who are just doing. What does mushrooming means?
Yeah. So what mushrooming really means is it refers to the rapid growth and kind of proliferation of online shopping platforms. So if you look around, we're seeing just an abundance of marketplaces and shopping platforms and new areas to buy product and interact with brands, whether it's your social and all of the opportunities with social commerce these days, your live stream selling, your metaverse selling, or your traditional, e-commerce and retail, and then everything in between. So it's really that concept that, hey, it's mushrooming and kind of creating this big, cloud or umbrella of retail. But it's also means that they're popping up, right? Mushrooms after a big rainstorm, they'll pop up and sprout up everywhere after a good rain, right? So speaking of mushrooms, why did the mushroom go to the party? Because he's a fun guy. There you go. That joke number one. But anyway,
Okay.
we have more and more businesses in the online channel. We have more and more businesses focused on social media and websites and apps and reaching their customers wherever they need to be reached, which means there's more and more data. There's more and more channels for this mushrooming to take place. So we are just seeing an abundance of areas for consumers to shop and interact with brands. And I think that's going to be a challenging thing for a lot of brands to, keep organized and centralized and understand who their customers are and keep a hold of their customer data. So that's really what that means. Yeah.
Okay, so I know this is a lot of this topic has been discussed a lot of time, after pandemic, what happened to retail. But if you can just quickly touch upon that how the user behavior changed after the pandemic. People were like, just going crazy, buying, like, going to the store and, like, just buying, stocking up the toilet papers and, like, all those things. But do you see the shift, and is it shifting back? Or how you see after this retail transformation perspective?
Yeah, so it's a good question because I think it highlights some things about how we view the market and how we make investments. Because over the last decade plus, obviously we've seen a huge adoption in digital, right? All brands were moving and pushing towards getting into e-commerce or onto digital channels, even if they're not an e-commerce brand. Um, but all retail for sure was trying to push towards digital. And then we saw the pandemic hit, which just accelerated that 5-10 years into the future. And a lot of people were saying, this is never going to go back, right? It's going to stay digital. It's going to stay where it is right now. And they were wrong, right? We did see a big amount of people start heading back to the stores. Maybe it was because they were cooped up inside for 2 years, or some still going and 3 years in. But for the most part, a lot of people started to get back out and get into the store. But what's interesting is that even though they started going back to the store, those experiences that they had online for the last 2 years and that accelerated growth, they still have those expectations, right? So they want beautiful experiences. They want fast, easy, intuitive checkouts where you don't have to interact with a retail sales associate or any other person to help check out. So their expectations have changed, in that they are expecting more from an experience perspective, from an ease of use and education perspective than ever before. So our world, this retail world, is evolving, and we can make predictions about where it's going to go and where it's going to settle. But I think the concept of omnichannel is and what it's evolved to with connected commerce and really making that experience across all omnichannel touch points rather than just being there, is what's going to settle in as where we need to be and where we need to be making our investments. But we need to be ready for change, right? Because we had this happen, and something else is going to happen, and the change is going to be even more abrupt. So our retail world is evolving, like I said, kind of like a chameleon. And you know what's a chameleon's favorite game? Hide
No,
and
I
seek.
don't.
Hide and seek, but
I didn't see.
they're always spotted. So
Okay.
know,
So you mentioned about omni-channel, and so that's like, something very interesting, that there's a lot of trends happening about the social commerce and social selling, which nowadays, like, I would say, like, every household could potentially be a retail store. Uh, so do you see, like, that consumer are now more interested in end-to-end product life cycle, or getting they wanted to know more about the product, because they are also potentially be their own in-home retail shop selling online, and how this online selling is trending?
yeah. So this is really where we see that mushrooming term we talked about earlier. This what you just mentioned is exactly right. I mean, we're starting to see all these different channels where everybody, even individuals who used to just be consumers and customers, can now become stores, right? They can now become places where people can check out because either they're a influencer, or they have a big group of friends, or they have a lot of friends on Facebook who are willing to interact with them about brands. And these people are starting to build their own customer base, right? And we're seeing this a lot in the social media. Obviously, in Asia, we're seeing a huge trend in the live commerce that's over the last few years has gone through the roof in terms of the amount of revenue we've seen going through their live commerce channels. Us here in the West, we haven't necessarily adopted that as much, most likely because our attention spans are not really suited towards an hour-long live stream where someone is trying to sell us a product. Rather, we're much more suited to the short form video. So your Instagram reels and your TikToks and your stories and things like that. So those people in our industry, or in our countries in the West, who are building those markets and those audiences, they all have something in common, right? Something that is drawing them to this person, whether it's a mom group or it's someone about sustainability who's an eco-friendly person or something. So these people all have things that they care about, whether it's the mom's caring about, okay, this product is manufactured in a warehouse that maybe has BPA in it. Well, we don't want that. Obviously, we don't want any of our plastic at BPA, or the sustainability of this other product is not right. So more so than ever, we're seeing that people are starting to care about this full life cycle of product, either because they care themselves or because the group of people that they're in from a social media perspective also care. And that's the type of stuff that they're pushed. We've seen a sustainability be more important than ever, especially around how it's ethically is sourced. And, I really wanted to tell you a joke about sustainability, a dad joke, but I didn't want to waste your time.
Okay, got it. Okay, so this is a very good point, and from a technology perspective, I just want to ask you, that with all those social selling and all the consumer, not just the end user, but the consumer is still concerned about what they are purchasing, and potentially they are reselling it, through the social channel. So, is it from a technology perspective? Are those different retailers or manufacturer distributor, what they are doing, and how, do you see the trend changing in the supply chain world, both upstream, downstreams, and how this a connected supply chain, being in place to, to cater this new audience that is, out there in the market?
Yeah, supply chain is obviously one of those areas that's seen a tremendous amount of challenges over the last few years, and they need to adapt, and brands need to adapt, and people who are in the industry need to understand who's selling the product and where it's going. So what we're seeing from a technology perspective is really, AI and ML based tools that do predictive analytics that can help you with better warehousing, better stocking, making sure you have the right product, predicting based on thousands of different factors where your certain products are going to be sold, and by what persona of people and what groups of people are going to be buying it, and when are they most active. Thousands of different things that can influence that, and there are tools out there that can get you very accurate predictions on how to best stock and how to best set up your warehouses to deliver in the shortest amount of time, and have the best or the most relevant type of product for these customers. The other aspect is less technology and more just transparency. A lot of people, myself included, when we shop, what's most important to us is really knowing when we're going to get our product. And that's a big problem when you go through some of these, smaller retailers, or even some of these individuals who are selling that are, reselling product, or, making their own little startup and trying to go that way. They don't have the technology to be transparent. So it's important for consumers and those expectations to be transparent. If you are able to tell a consumer that they are not going to be able to get this product within the time that they want, but there's some other products that they can, that's a good experience. Or they might not care about when they get their product. So making sure that we're just transparent and we give them the tools to be able to do it themselves and check themselves is what's going to separate people from, the competitors.
I see. And from a commerce perspective, that how the companies are reaching out, because it's now the multiple channels
Mm-hmm.
that they can potentially sell, from an omni-channel perspective. So from your side of the aisle, from a digital consulting or digital side, how you see, that the content that they are producing, or the technology enabled they are putting in forward, is it helping or is it evolving, or do you see any trend change in there as well?
Are you specifically asking about e-commerce and
E-commerce, yes.
that technology? Okay,
Yeah.
so the technology. This might be just an opinion of mine, but we're starting to see some technology that is really changing the way consumers interact with websites and the way that consumers check out and buy products. But for the most part, it's still pretty much the same. I mean, if you look at your top visited, your top purchased websites, Amazon included, it's follows a very similar user journey, right? You start with landing on their website. You then identify your product through search or through navigating their information architecture and their categories yourself until you find what you're looking for. And then you maybe compare some prices, you look at the details, and then you add it to cart and you check out. That is really how the web works today when it comes to online purchasing. But my opinion is that that needs to evolve. If we look at brick and mortar retail, for example, and you look across the industries, there are different ways to check out. You brought it up in previous conversations with me. When we look at online, or when we look at grocery store checkout, we're going through self checkout, and it's a very good experience. When we look at car buying, maybe it's not a great experience, but that's completely different than when we look at going to a grocery store. When we talk about buying clothing, and we're at J. Crew or Banana Republic or wherever, and they, we're talking about getting a hands-on style, as we're going through the process. But when we look at those industries online, it's all pretty much the same, with maybe the exception of the car industry and a couple other industries that have begun innovating and how you get your product. They haven't really done that broadly. And I think that that's a really important aspect to how we can evolve the online technology to be more, personalized and more apropos for these customers and consumers when they're interacting with the brand. It's all going to be about education. It's going to be about, ease of use, and it's going to be about making sure that the product that we're suggesting or that this person is buying is correct. Because we know in a lot of situations they could be buying the wrong things, and then that's going to lead to higher returns and things like that. And you don't have that human touch that you have in store. So how do we close the gap? And it's going to be through AI. It's going to be through guided selling. It's going to be through education. But we have to figure that out because, candidly, e-commerce is a little bit behind in the checkout experience from other industries.
I see. Did you know the biggest online retailer start selling steak? You know what was that? It's Amazon Prime.
Oh, there we go. Amazon Prime. I like a good Prime steak.
Okay, good. So now, this is you mentioned about the Amazon, and there's something that's interesting came up my mind, that all those different retailers, in 2003 and 4, 5. I've noticed at that time, I was working with one of the organization, it's a Fortune 10 organization doing the entire digital transformation, especially on the e-commerce experience. And at that time, I studied one of the report from Gartner that Sears was leading this transformation from omnichannel perspective, from store pickup to rewards and all those things. And eventually, what happened, that they just got bankrupt, and one of the reason they say, they invested a lot on a digital side, and they forgot about the retail experience, which that triggered, because they were selling electronics and those items which is people like to go and see, feel, touch, and then buy it rather online. Now the question is here, uh, there are retailers who are moving away from the brick and mortar, but the online giants like Amazon, they are building the stores, brick and mortar stores. So where you see, is a transition happening, is because if you provide a better customer experience, it doesn't matter you're brick and mortar or online, or it's just a shift in the trend or changing something around.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question again. We are seeing this kind of interesting, dichotomy, if you will, in digitally native companies versus brick and mortar native companies, and where are they going to ultimately end up from a balance perspective. And I think really balance is the important word here. And it kind of goes back to that first question we were talking about earlier too, which is, we made a lot of predictions, and I think Sears made a big prediction that digital was going to happen a lot faster than maybe they thought. And maybe they were about 10 years too early, right? If you think about all the investment they had made and the pandemic comes around a little sooner, that probably could have put a nice, been a nice win for them in terms of when they were able to make that investment. And but it's really about balance. We can't put all of our eggs in one basket and think that just because consumer behavior shifted during the pandemic that it's going to stay that way, right? We can't just say, okay, now we have to go all in on digital, but at the same time, we can't not go in on digital at all because we are seeing this evolution and this expectation from an omni-channel perspective that we need to be with where our customer needs us all the time. And even take it a step further than omnichannel, it needs to be a connected commerce. We need to have that experience be seamless and the experience be consistent no matter where they're interacting with us. And the canvas is evolving, right? It's infinitely evolving. We've seen the evolution from just brick and mortar to the web to mobile to applications to, even chat bots and interacting in that space. And then now we're seeing, or over the last couple of years, we saw the metaverse and other things that are just coming down the line, and we need to be prepared, but we need to be prepared to not go all in. We need to make those efforts. We need to test, we need to learn, but the balance is always going to lie in our consumers, right? We need to say, what are our customers doing? What is the data that they're doing telling us that they want to do? And let's run focus groups. Let's run tests and find out where they want to be. Where do they want to interact with us? And then we can, create the perfect recipe to get, to build that balance across all of these, omni-channel connected commerce, infinite canvas experiences. We just need the right ingredients. And, that reminds me, why did the baker go to therapy?
Why is that?
Because he needed it. He just couldn't find the right mix of ingredients for a balanced life.
Awesome. Well, I want you to just you touched upon a little bit on the in-store experience, which is a surprise element. Not surprise, I would say, but everyone now become a cashier. When you're going to any stores, you're just checking out yourself, even weighing in all those fresh products and all those things, and then it's sort of I see a very good experience, and it's easy to understand because everyone is doing it, and especially on Walmart you find very few cashier than self checkout. You are a design expert, you run a lot of design thinking exercises with different companies, and what I've seen, the online experience, which is the e-commerce experience, is still not as optimized as the in-store checkout. Why is that retailers are not focusing on providing a better e-commerce experience? Like Amazon is being a benchmark, creating the experience, but not everyone is following that. Do you see a difference in how this is trending and changing?
Yeah. So, I see a huge difference, right? And that's my opinions. There are my own, but there is a big gap between some in-store checkout experiences and online checkout experiences. When we look at, to your point, grocery stores and their self-checkout experiences, which are great. Let's look at Amazon Go and their stores where you don't even have to talk to anyone. You don't even have to pull out your phone. You just walk in and grab your products and leave. Let's look at the Apple store. Completely different experience. There's people everywhere, but it's all done right on their little phone and the machine that they have on the back of the phone. You don't have to go to a checkout register. You don't have to go anywhere. And let's look at car buying and all these other things. There's different experiences, right? And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but we haven't seen that same level of personalization across industries online that we have within brick and mortar. And I do think that there are very bad in-store experiences. I mean, there's plenty of places where you go where you are transacting in a retail environment that are, not good. You're waiting in lines. You're not getting any of the help you need from the associate who's there, and you can't do your own research because there's no internet connection and things like that. But there are stores that have figured it out, and they have a little bit more flexibility to do this personalization and create these great experiences than you do on the web, because you can do it all through people, right? And a little bit of technology. Technology definitely helps, but people can make that difference. On the web and in e-commerce experiences, you don't have the people. So how do we create a checkout and experience that is going to rival what they have in store? And it's going to be in our consumer data, and we got to look at what our customers want and analyze that. But I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, Tauseef. I mean, design thinking is a great a tool and framework to use. It's really meant to put the customer and their needs and their feelings and empathize with them right at the forefront of any product development design that you do. So These are ways that you can look at who your customer is, build your personas about them, understand their journeys, and then create experiences that are going to delight them, that are going to, innovate and be and separate yourself from the competitor. Because right now, as I said on one of the questions earlier, all online experiences, with the exception of a couple industries, are pretty much the same. And when I'm buying a $2,000 mattress versus a $15 t-shirt, and I'm doing the same checkout experience, that seems a little bit weird, especially considering I want to have a lot more knowledge and a lot more info about this mattress that I'm going to spend 3 years at least of the next 10 sleeping in. Right, it's a big purchase. Whereas a t-shirt, I can get rid of it, but it's the same checkout experience. So
Yeah.
we need to differentiate. We need to educate. And we need to look at our data and test and figure out how can we create online experiences that are personalized and revolutionary, just like people are doing in store with self-checkout, with Apple style, and with Amazon Go style. There's a need for it, and we haven't seen that yet, but it's going to come because of the adoption of AI and ML, and its use across e-commerce and beyond, because it's going to make it a lot easier for us when we can use that to identify trends, identify opportunities, and build products.
Okay, Will, I want to ask you one more question. As Visionet, is a global company, and we have a global audience listening it.
Yeah.
And I know you work with Europe and US, in different regions that you have worked with different retailers. Do you see any difference in buying behavior or shopping behavior, which retailers are looking into it, and their strategy is different on those regions? Can you just talk about a little bit of that, how this is different and what retailers are doing to enable that experience?
Absolutely. There is 100% difference in buying trends from market to market and from region to region. Even as different as US versus Canada, right? We have some Canadian clients and we have some US clients, and we have some US clients that want to expand into Canada. And you can't just do it the same way you're doing it in the US and Canada. You can't do it the same way you were doing it in Europe and try to expand in the US and think that you're going to just be successful. It really starts with understanding who your customer is and what their lifestyle is like. We obviously know that in some European countries, it's very common for them to go to the grocery store every single day. And they'll go to the grocery store, they'll pick up their food for the day, and they'll come home and they'll make all their food. In the US, some people don't go to the grocery store for 2 weeks, even more, right? It's a completely different ball game. So you got to think about who your consumer is, what their actions are, do your research, talk to them, watch them. This whole concept of conceptual and ethnographic research is very important, because a lot of times you ask consumers questions, you ask people questions, they're going to have a bias when they answer, but when they act, it might be a little bit different. So let's watch them in their natural state, right? Whether that's watching someone interact with a website, watching someone interact in their daily life, and really analyze that and use those patterns and those trends that they have to leverage and influence what you build on the e-com and separate yourself. So yeah, it's very different. We need to look at the trends. We need to look at the data.
Exactly,
and we need to do design thinking and put those people at the forefront of what we're building, where we're building. And it's an important key I didn't touch on earlier. It's where are we building, right?
Yeah.
And could be different.
Could be different.
sites,
Exactly. Yeah, on that, on the New Year, I went to this store and two guys, stole the calendar. They both got 6 months.
So what are they doing for the other 6 months? Are they can't tell time? They don't know what.
Yeah, I mean, they both got 6 months, so can't help it. Bill, it was very good conversation, and I'm sure there's a lot of different questions, and you have to promise, to come back again. I'm sure, our audience enjoyed it, and guys, if you have any question, please, you can send an email to us at info@visionet.com, or you can leave it at the comment box. Will is more than welcome, to please to answer all your cast question. Until next time, thank you everyone for joining VisionCast, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you have any feedback about our next show, or you want to touch upon some other topics for us, please do share your thoughts. Any feedback is welcome. Again, thank you, and also please do comment which joke that you like the best, or you think all the jokes were really that corny joke. So
Really bad.
really bad joke. We have to work on those things. Thank you, Will. Have a good one, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thanks, Tauseef. See you, everybody.